Hey there, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about something that can feel incredibly overwhelming, the panic attack. We're going to break down what it is, why on earth it happens, and most importantly, what you can do about it, both for the long haul and right in the middle of that terrifying moment. The Mayo Clinic really nails the definition here. The words that just jump out are sudden and no real danger. This isn't you being scared of something that's right in front of you. This is a powerful physical thing that feels 100% real, even when you can't see a reason for it. It's like a storm inside your own body. And that internal storm, well, it feels like this. For so many people, the physical feelings are the absolute worst part. A heart that's pounding out of your chest can make you think you're having a heart attack. Feeling like you can't breathe is terrifying. And all of that leads your brain to two of our most basic, primal fears: the fear of losing your mind and the fear of actually dying. So, what is actually going on here? Put simply, your body's built-in alarm system, that ancient fight-or-flight response, is getting a false alarm. It's kind of like your home's smoke detector is perfectly wired to scream when there's a fire, but a wire got crossed, and now it goes off every time you make toast. The alarm itself works fine, it's just firing at completely the wrong time. Okay, let's dive into our first section, the anatomy of panic. We're going to look at what's happening on a clinical level during that crazy surge of fear. So the most important part of the official definition is the timing. A panic attack is an abrupt surge. This is not a slow-building anxiety that you feel all day. It hits you like a ton of bricks, and it hits fast. Usually, that peak intensity, the absolute worst of it, happens within just a few minutes. Right. So according to the DSM-5, which is basically the manual that doctors and therapists use, there are 13 official symptoms for a panic attack. And to meet the clinical definition, a person has to experience that intense surge of fear plus at least 4 of those 13 symptoms. And this is probably the single most important thing you could ever remember, especially if you're in the middle of one. It feels like a catastrophe. It feels like your body is failing you, but it's not. Panic attacks, as awful and uncomfortable as they are not physically dangerous. They won't kill you. This brings us to a really, really critical idea. See, having one panic attack is one thing, but what happens when the fear of having another one becomes the real problem? This is what we call the fear of fear. And this chart shows that crucial difference. A panic attack is an event. It happens and then it's over. But panic disorder is what can grow around that event. It's when you start constantly worrying about the next one. It's when you start avoiding places or people or situations because you're terrified it might happen again. The line that clinicians draw in the sand is about a month. If after an attack you spend at least a solid month really worrying about it happening again, or you start making big changes in your life to avoid it, that's when a doctor might start to consider a diagnosis of panic disorder. Okay, so we've defined the problem pretty well. Now let's talk about the solution. How do we actually treat this? Well, modern therapy has a really fascinating way of looking at it, and it's all about retraining your brain. So how does this retraining work? Well, the old school way of thinking was something called habituation. Basically, you just face your fear over and over until you get used to it and it goes away. But the new approach, inhibitory learning, is smarter. The goal isn't to erase the old fear memory. The idea is to create a new, stronger, more powerful memory of safety that can compete with and eventually override the fear memory when you're triggered. So, how do you build that new, powerful memory? You use a really cool technique called expectancy violation. It works like this. First, you say your biggest fear out loud. If my heart starts racing, I'm going to have a heart attack and die. Then you do something to make your heart race, like running in place. And nothing happens. That huge gap between what you expected to happen and what actually happened creates a powerful surprise for your brain. And that surprise is what builds the new, stronger pathway that says, hey, a racing heart is safe. So that's the long-term work. But what about right now? What can you do when you feel that wave of panic starting to build? Let's put together a mental first aid kit. Now, it is so important to understand this. These techniques are not a cure for panic disorder. Think of them as emergency tools. This is your first aid kit for your mind, designed to help you ride out the storm and get back a sense of control when you need it most. First up is a pretty wild one that's based purely on our biology. It's called the mammalian diving reflex, and it's like a physiological reset button. When you hold your breath and put your face in ice-cold water, it triggers an ancient reflex that automatically slows your heart rate down. It's your body's emergency brake, and it is a shockingly powerful way to slam the brakes on that panic spiral. Next up, a classic grounding technique. Panic wants to pull all of your attention inward to get you to focus on the storm of scary feelings. The 5-4-3-2-1 method does the exact opposite. It forces your brain to look outward. By making yourself notice things you can see, touch, hear, smell, and taste, you anchor yourself in the present moment and starve the panic of the attention it needs to grow. And if the 5-4-3-2-1 method feels like just too much to remember when your brain is racing, the 3-3-3 rule is an amazing, simpler version. Just name 3 things you see, identify 3 sounds you can hear, and then, this is the key part, move 3 parts of your body. Wiggle your toes, roll your shoulders, whatever. That mix of sensory input and physical movement is a super quick and effective way to get grounded. So, those are the tools for the acute moments. But what about the bigger picture? What does that long-term path to recovery actually look like? Well, the evidence shows that it's usually a combination of things. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is really the gold standard for therapy. It helps you change those faulty thought patterns. On the medicine side of things, SSRIs are often the first thing a doctor will try. And hey, don't ever underestimate the power of just plain old regular exercise. It's been shown again and again to help protect us against anxiety. And that brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. This is so important. The goal of recovery is not to get to a point where you never feel anxiety again. I mean, that's just not how humans work. The real goal is to get to a place where you have a deep confidence that if and when those feelings show up, you can handle them. It's about building resilience, not trying to get rid of a feeling. So, we'll leave you with this question. We've talked about how that cycle of panic is often a learned response. Your brain learned to connect a physical feeling with a catastrophe. But if fear can be learned, that means something else can be learned in its place. It means new, healthier, more confident responses can be learned too. Thanks for joining us.